Hello everybody, my name is Nootmad, hope you're doing well, and welcome to another Borderlands 3 build video. And today we're going over my Metal Jacket version 2 build. Now, my Metal Jacket Moze build is a Bloodletter amp build, and in my opinion is one of the best ways to use the Bloodletter class mod to its absolute limits. In its simplest description, the Metal Jacket Moze build abuses amp shields. Because the Bloodletter's special effect is to turn all health regen into shield regen, we're able to combine that with a powerful amp shield like the 0.M to be able to push the build's damage to its absolute limits. And as you can see in the background gameplay, this build is absolutely crushing all the enemies in my path. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just get straight into the video. So, as far as the weapons go for this, I choose to use the Plaguebearer rocket launcher. Obviously it's a rocket launcher that drops on the Warden in the Anvil and need in 6. What it does is it fires a very slow moving projectile surrounded by micro missiles that home in on enemies, dealing massive damage to enemies in a nearby area and wiping out massive clusters. And once again, in the background gameplay, you can see enemies are getting blown up left, right and center. As far as the anointments go, I highly recommend one of two, either the consecutive hits anointment or the 390. However, if I could only pick one, I'd suggest this consecutive hits, just because the damage bonus from consecutive hits is very easy to maintain through things like skag and grenade damage, because damage over time counts for that, counts for the consecutive hit maintenance. So yeah, definitely a lot more easier to use this, as well as the fact that a lot of the raid bosses, well, the only two raid bosses in this game have immunity phases, so once you go past the immunity phase, they're going to be under 90% HP, and therefore the anoint on your gun is basically worthless. So that's why I prefer to use consecutive hits. It's basically applicable in all situations, and even when mobbing, you can see you don't really need the 390, all the enemies get one shot anyway most of the time. As far as the elements go, I recommend getting one of each element, but if you can only pick two, I would suggest getting a Cryo Plaguebearer and a Shock Plaguebearer. Cryo works well against flesh and armored targets, and Shock works well against shield bars. So, for example, in Guardian Takedown, I'm using the Cryo Plaguebearer right now to defeat the Necrotophagia bugs in the initial encounter, and then I will swap to the Shock Plaguebearer to kill the Guardians. And also in Slaughter Shop gameplay that you'll see soon, I'm using my Cryo Plaguebearer for that, and yeah, it just absolutely wipes out the armor bars, which is very useful, because armor has armor has resistance to radiation damage, and Cryo does more damage to armor. It works a lot nicer to be able to use a Cryo Plaguebearer in this situation. You can also use a backburner, but in my opinion I just find the Plaguebearer a lot more useful and applicable in more situations, because it can wipe out enemies over a longer distance as opposed to the backburner that only kills enemies who are clustered together. So that's the weapon out of the way. As far as the shield goes, we're using the enhanced version 0.M. It is a legendary amp shield that drops from the Valkyries in Malawan Takedown on Midnight Scan, and what it does is gives us 125% amp damage when the shield is full. Now you can use shields like the Rerouter or the One-Shotter, but bear in mind the One-Shotter shield only amps your damage by 100%, and the Rerouter shield only buffs your damage by 120%, so the version 0.M is slightly better. And if you're looking for the absolute maximized damage potential for this build, get yourself version 0.M. Prefix doesn't matter, I just have the double capacity prefix, but you can realistically use whatever you want. As far as the anoint goes, I highly recommend using the after exiting Iron Bear kills increase Iron Bear's cooldown rate by 30%. This helps us keep Iron Bear up, so in things like Guardian Takedown where you need some aggro draw, it helps a lot. And also having Auto Bear out to be able to deal damage over it while you're fighting is on foot Moze, it works very nicely as well. You can use a bonus element on your shield, but in all honesty, and as you can see in the gameplay in the background, you don't really need bonus elements to do more damage. The base element of your Plaguebearer is fine, combined with Skagden, which is a skill of Moze's skill tree that we'll go into soon. But yeah, you don't realistically need any bonus elements, so yeah, I highly recommend the cooldown anoint on the shield. Moving on from the amp shield, we have our Bloodletter class mod. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, the Bloodletter is a legendary class mod that drops from the Skagga Survival and Gradium Dawn Proving Ground. Trial of Survival, I believe it's called. And yeah, what the Bloodletter does is it turns all health regen into shield regen. So, in combination with Russian Offensive, which is a lifesteal skill, and Vampire, which is a also another lifesteal skill that works with grenade damage, we're able to keep our shields up at maximum capacity almost always, which means that we can amp all our shots with the Plaguebearer. So that's the underlying synergy there. As far as the stats go on your Bloodletter, highly recommend things like splash damage, heavy weapon damage, weapon type damage, so like once again, heavy weapon damage, or even elemental damage as well. So if you're using a Cryo Plaguebearer, try and get yourself cryo damage on that, or just generic weapon damage will work nicely too. So those are the stat rolls I recommend. And as far as the skills go, I highly recommend, and actually compulsory recommended, 2 points in Thin Red Line, or 3 points in desperate measures, just to be able to get the maximum damage out of that. Now, the reason why I suggest 2 points of Thin Red Line is to put ourselves at 1 HP without having to use a Deathless Relic. Now, in my previous Metal Jacket build, this principle applied there also. Because the Deathless Relic doesn't really provide Moze with any conceivable benefit, it's sort of a dud spot, and it's a waste of a suffix. Instead of that, using a Victory Rush Relic enables us to do extra damage and movement speed when we kill a badass, which gives us that extra damage multiplier, as opposed to a Deathless Relic which does literally nothing for Moze's damage numbers. So, by using 2 points of Thin Red Line, as well as putting our own points into Thin Red Line in the skill, we're able to put ourselves at 1 HP and be able to use a much better relic as well. So, Surge Victory Rush is a relic I recommend, and once again, as far as the stat rolls go, things like area effect damage, weapon damage, actions cooldown rate, all those things which will typically apply for Moze on foot, work very well here. So that's the relic out of the way, and just before we move on to the other thing, you can get yourself Victory Rush Relic from Azalea and Jacob's Estate on Eden 6. Now, that is the Victory Rush out of the way, and as far as the grenade goes, we're using a Spring Epicenter. Now you can either use this or a Cloney Maddening Tracker. Honestly, I've just started to prefer the Spring Epicenter more, but considering this is a heavy launcher weapon build, you do want multiple grenade explosions to be able to proc means of destruction and keep our ammo up. So if in that case, if you are struggling to maintain your ammo, get yourselves a Cloney Maddening Tracker, but if not, a Spring Epicenter works just as fine, and you're less likely to down yourself, as opposed to using a Cloney Maddening Tracker. So that's the gear out of the way, and now we can move on to the skill tree. So let's start off with Demolition Woman, shall we? And once again, nothing too special. We have 5 points in Skagden, 5 points in Torque Up Motion, and 1 point in Short Fuse. Those two skills are our primary damage dealers. Skagden gives us instant damage on splash, Torque Cross Motion increases our splash damage and splash radius, and Short Fuse gives us that extra damage chances, which gets absolutely insane when fighting bosses and mobs alike. We have 5 points in Stainless Steel Bear as well, to boost our Skagden, because that's just how it's calculated now. Action skill damage boosts Stainless Steel Bear, so that's why we have that. We have 3 points of Mean Destruction. Once again, this is a heavy weapon build, so we want to be able to get as much ammo regen as possible for that. We have a single point in Pull the Holy Pin. Now, because we're not using a Minesweeper class mod, we don't really need multiple points in that. 1 point is enough to get our grenades to crit to proc redistribution, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, any more points in this, and in my opinion, it's wasted. So that's why I only put 1 point in here. We have 5 points of Vampire. Now this is basically just to maintain our health and shield top up. Realistically, you don't need 5 points of Vampire, but I just put it in here just to act as a bit of a safety blanket. A single Epicenter grenade toss on an enemy will put our shields completely to full, so it just works very nicely in that synergy. We have a point into the last, very useful utility skill, maintains our 2-angle die perk as well as our consecutive hits annoying while we're down, so it just makes so we can do as much damage as possible and get out of fight for your life as quick as possible. So yeah, that's Demolition Woman tree out of the way, and we can quickly touch on Bottomless Mags. Now, we went into Bottomless Mags all the way down to Russian Offensive, nothing more, nothing less. Russian Offensive works very well, nicely with the Plague Barrel, because it gives us lifesteal on when we're doing damage. So for example, if I was to shoot the Plague Barrel and then run in a straight line, or any direction I want, as long as that homing Plague Barrel is doing damage and I'm sprinting, I will get lifesteal. So basically you can just fire and forget your rocket, then sprint, and your shields get topped up and ready to amp every single shot. We have Stoke the Embers as well to boost our instant damage, and we have Redistribution as well to give us some ammo regen and some nice health regen. The 1 point in Scrappy is only there just to push ourselves further in the tree. You can realistically put that point into Darker Bear, Match Set, or one of those 3 skills. But yeah, either way, it's not really going to make that much of an impactful decision. So yeah, it's only just there to push us into Russian Offensive. Now, moving away from Bottomless Mags, we get to Shield Retribution. Now here's where the meat of the build starts, and as you can see, nothing too special here. The main difference is that we have invested 3 points in the Thin Red Line. Now that's only done just because, once again, to put ourselves on 1 HP, because we don't want to have to use a Deathless Relic to do so. So that's why we have that. At 5 points, you can put yourself at 1 HP, and be able to use a Victory Rush Relic instead for the extra damage multiplier. We have 3 points of Desperate Measures to give us extra damage when we're at 1 HP, so we might as well give ourselves that bonus. And we have Phalanx Doctrine. Now this is the absolute powerhouse of the skill, and as you can see in some points of the gameplay, especially at the start when I was in Guardian Takedown, I was maintaining about 10 to 15 Phalanx stacks, sometimes breaking into the mid-20s, giving us an absolutely absurd amount of gun damage and shields. Bear in mind that doesn't matter how many shields you have, you can still get one shot through that. That's just a life of being under health gate. But we might as well make the most use of what we have. So that's why I put 5 points of the Phalanx Doctrine and 5 points of the Dreading Brass, just to give us some sustainable damage. And yeah, that's it for the build. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video and subscribe as well if you're new to the channel. This is only the start of the stuff I'm going to be putting out, so I'm going to be updating a lot more builds at level 65 and putting out a lot more content that I'm sure you guys would find use out of. So yeah, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll definitely be notified about that. But yeah, with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya!